Powered by Righteous Media.
Welcome to Independent Americans. Welcome to episode 359. It is Friday, October 24th. Happy Friday. Trump is continuing to destroy the White House. There are new strikes on alleged narco boats off the coast of Venezuela. Trump is headed to China, and Hegseth might start a new war while he's gone. Thankfully, the NBA is back, and we've got football coming up. And now is most definitely a time to stay vigilant. Joining us today, as we have moved to the new daily format, I am very happy to bring a man and a friend and a leader who I have admired for a long time. I've known from a distance for a long time, who's been very generous to join us. The former chair of the DNC, a thoughtful public leader, a dedicated father, and big NBA fan, the great and powerful Jaime Harrison is joining us on Independent Americans. Welcome, Jaime. Happy Friday.
Thank you, Paul. Happy Friday to you, man. And thank you so much for the invitation to be on.
Well, we our paths recrossed on the toxic Shark Tank of a shit show that is CNN in the 10 o'clock hour a couple of, 2 weeks ago, maybe, right?
Yeah, a few weeks ago, Abby Phillips show. And yeah,
I love Abby.
I do too.
I have a love-hate relationship with her show. I want to ask you about that, and I want to talk about the state of the Democratic Party, talk about Graham Platner in Maine, talk a little bit about your thoughts on leadership and fatherhood. But a question I ask everybody, Jaime, where are you in the world, and how are you on this Friday?
So right now I'm home, Columbia, South Carolina. You know, since I am no longer chair, I'm spending a whole lot more time back home in the great state, the great Palmetto state of South Carolina. And, you know, Paul, as it relates to how I am, man, I'm stressed a lot, and my blood pressure's up because I hate to see what is happening to our country. I really do. But, you know, the norms that you could count on, regardless if it was a Democrat or Republican in the White House or in control of the House or the Senate, those aren't the norms of today. And I think that's just extremely problematic.
I appreciate that. We're both fathers of young boys, and a conversation I want to really dig into adjacent to all this politics and wrapped into all this politics is just what I think is a crisis of role models in America and how to help raise children in an environment like this, which I think is very complicated. I want to get your thoughts maybe later in our conversation about that. But we were at CNN. We have a dear mutual friend in Nick King, who you went to Yale with, who I have been begging to do a podcast for years. He's one of my favorite people in the world. I love him. He's a parenting role model. Nick, you got to come on the show. But you guys went to Yale together in a galaxy far away. But we reunited, at CNN. Let me ask you a straight up question, man, because I'm kind of torn on this. Are shows like that good for America or bad for America? Because sometimes I walk out of there, and I think I've told Abby this, I feel a little dirty, and I don't pull any punches. I think Scott Jennings is bad for America. I think he's pushing propaganda. He and I have gotten into it, and I'm really critical that they continue to have him and other people on the air. But I also, want to go out there and talk about the topics I care about and try to represent, especially independent folks and vets. But Jaime, what's your take on it?
No, I think it does bring some toxicity to the body politic. And people like Scott are very disingenuous because, sometimes I don't believe Scott believes 50% of the shit that he says on that show. And that's just, that's a problem, and sometimes you leave that show and you talk to the folks behind the scenes and like, oh, I don't know why Trump said this, or I don't believe. But when they get on the show and the cameras are rolling, then they're saying something totally different. And the one thing I hope people will always say about me is it doesn't matter if the cameras are on or off. You're getting the same Jaime all the time. Like, I have a big heart. I love this country. My love for this country may look different than your love or somebody else's. But ultimately, it's about that this is a great nation that we live in, and that all of the greatness of this nation should be available to all of the nation's people. And that's what the founders said, right? And so we may come at it a different way in terms of how we make sure that happens. but hopefully that's the destination for everybody. But sometimes, you get on these shows with these folks and they say the things that they say, and, and then you look at their bios and they talk about Christ and they talk about this and that, and it ain't Christ-like, not the Christ that I'm reading about or learning about. So that's the thing that really gets me in politics today.
Yeah, I feel you on that. And some of them are assholes on TV and off.
Oh, yeah.
Some of them are the same.
Yeah.
Some of them, and that always surprises me, is how sometimes rude and kind of dismissive folks who are just like the basic, like I walk in a show like that, I say hello to everybody, right? That's like a basic thing. That's how I was raised, right? Some folks don't do that. And I know who's coming for me because I'm usually in the middle. I got Democrats and Republicans coming at me as the independent. And I can kind of feel like who doesn't want to be nice to me because of the haymakers coming, right? And I frankly I don't have time for that shit. But I'm also nostalgic for maybe an older school kind of television. I don't know if you were ever on Meet the Press back in the day. But after Meet the Press, folks may not know this, they used to have breakfast.
Yeah.
They used to have China, and they would have like a guy come out, like a waiter, and you would have breakfast with the guests, right? I remember I did Meet the Press once with Wes Moore, my friend Wes Moore, who's now the governor of Maryland, and John McCain, and like a couple other folks. And after we kind of mixed it all up, we had breakfast together. And there was something really, I think, important about that, about breaking bread. And I feel like too much of that is lost. I want this show to be a place where we can have respectful conversations. We can have disagreement, but we can also, set the right example for our kids who could be watching about how to treat each other, right?
That's exactly right. When I was state party chair here in South Carolina, my counterpart, and I was 20, maybe 30, 31, one of the youngest state party chairs in the country. Well, my counterpart was also one of the youngest Republican state party chairs in the country. And he and I had a wonderful working relationship. We would go on the road together and actually, debate issues and talk about all the things. But then we would have lunch with each other. We would talk about our families. And we even co-taught a class, a political science class together at the University of South Carolina. And that's how politics should be, right? You can have disagreements without hating each other, without, really disparaging folks to the point. But now it is so, politics used to be fun for me and it's not anymore. And it's so much so that I'm even questioning how much longer do I even want to stay in this space because it's so toxic.
Well, I hope you stay in a space for a long time, most of all, because you seem to be a good person, right? And you're pushing the right kind of tone. And I think that that's really important right now, is to have people with a respectful tone. I always want to bring that to this show and any show that I join. I mean, we're really missing, I think, kind of the common connections that they used to have in Congress. I always think about the World War II vets that when I first went to D.C., I met, and I meet Bob Dole and Frank Lautenberg, who were both World War II vets, different sides of the aisle. But they had that commonality. They would go out and have a beer. Their families would have meals together. That's gone now, and it's just this constant combat. But Jamie, if we can, let's get to a couple of headlines. I talk about top topics, and I think the top topic that I want to pull out on this Friday, when so much is flying at people, is the line from Steve Bannon yesterday that you may have seen. If folks haven't seen it, Chris, we may or may not be able to plug the clip in right here.
Well, he's going to get a third term. So Trump 28, Trump is going to be president in 28, and people just ought to get accommodated with that.
So what about the 22nd Amendment?
There's many different alternatives. At the appropriate time, we'll lay out what the plan is. But there's a plan, and President Trump will be the president in 28. We had longer odds in 16 and longer odds in 24 than we got in 28. And President Trump will be the president of the United States, and the country needs him to be president of the United States. We have to finish what we started. And the way we finish it through Trump. Trump is a vehicle. I know this will drive you guys crazy, but he's a vehicle of divine providence. He's an instrument. He's very imperfect. He's not churchy, not particularly religious, but he's an instrument of divine will. And you can tell this of how he's pulled this off.
But Steve Bannon basically said Trump won't leave in 2028. And, this is obviously getting a lot of traction. It's a viral clip. And it touches on something I've been talking about, which is I think there's a real failure of imagination outside the White House and in their inner circle. Trump's got a lot of imagination. Steve Bannon's got a lot of imagination, but especially the opposition and maybe most of the country has a failure to imagine what these guys will do and what Trump will do. And I believe them when they say shit.
Yeah.
I think they telegraph their punches. And even if it sounds crazy, I believe them. And he didn't leave last time. So why would people think he's going to leave this time when he has even more power? He has even more allies. There's less things stopping him. But let me ask you, as you know, one of the most notable voices for the Democratic Party and in this country on politics, what is your reaction to when Steve Bannon says Trump's not leaving in 2028?
No, but listen, Paul, I'm 100% with you on that. You have to believe these folks. When they say it, believe it. And they're going to try to find a way in order to make that the reality. And, I'm not disheartened or concerned about Trump so much. But the thing that really gets me is how feckless Republicans are in the House and the Senate to stand up to him. I mean, they literally don't have a backbone. Lindsey Graham posted something about Trump and a third term. I mean, there's something called the Constitution of the United States, which is the highest law in terms of man-made law that we have in this nation. It is the thing that they all take an oath to protect and defend, right, from domestic and foreign threats. But yet it doesn't mean a damn thing to them because, you'll have somebody like Lindsey Graham who rolls around South Carolina calling himself Mr. Rule of Law, right? And is so concerned about the rule of law in other nations and how other nations don't follow the rule of law and this and that, when he is basically touting and saying, Trump should have a third term. Well, he can't, right? The Constitution prohibits it from happening. And so that means you got to stand up, regardless if you're a Democrat or Republican. If you believe in this nation and you believe in the Constitution that governs this nation, then that can't happen. And so, that's where we have to be vigilant. And really, and I say this to the American people, wake the hell up. Wake the hell up. It's time for you. This is your government. This is your country. It's time for you to take it back. It's time for you to stand up for it. Because if you don't, if you sit on the sideline and be silent in the face of the bigotry, the hatred, and the lawlessness, then this will be a country that you won't recognize. This will be a country that your kids will inherit and that they will be subjected to whatever, authoritarian BS that these folks decide to put out there. That's not what I want for my boys. I know that's not what you want for yours. And so we got to stand up and we got to speak out.
So I agree with so much of that, and I feel you on so much of that. Now let's get to the point of the program where we may or may not disagree. The question becomes, what do we do about it? I hear Democrats all the time saying exactly what you said. And my question is, why does the country keep expecting the Democrats to save us? Because it seems to me that time and time again, the Democrats fail. I've called them the Failocrats. I'm not a Democrat. I'm not a Republican. 10,000 people in America are leaving the Republican and Democrat Party every day. That's part of why we have this show and why I think there is this growing majority of people who are rejecting all parties. This doesn't dismiss any of what the Republicans are doing, but the Democrats are like the New York Jets of politics. They just keep losing. And they don't seem to be able to stop him on anything, right? Whether he wants to stay till 2029 or he wants to knock down half of the White House. So I want to dig into this with you if I can and ask you, like, what the fuck is going on with the Democrats? Like, is there a strategy? Is there a leader? I know you've been critical as well, right? You've been an important critic within the party. But in your view, what's the plan? Is there a plan? Is there a leader? And will they be able to stop Trump on anything?
Well, Paul, I think the bottom line comes to this is that Democrats are, if I have to define the Democratic Party and just the conventional wisdom in the Democratic Party, imagine the classroom and you have a kid that always follows the rules. Like when the teacher says something, they always follow rules. The kid that always does his homework. The kid that is always making sure that they're handing it in time and they're doing extra credit, right? That is the Democratic Party. The Republican Party, on the other hand, is that other kid who never does their homework, who copies the other kid's homework, who cuts class, who tries to find every easy way to get around certain things, but still wants to be in power and wants to be liked, wants to be the top of the classroom, but not do the work to do it. And so what you have in the Democratic Party is that you got people who are rule followers, right? They want to stick to the rules. And so they think about, well, if we're debating legislation, here are the rules in terms of how we govern legislation. Well, if that doesn't work, then we go to the courts, and that's what we have to do. I think it's going to come to the point where Republicans aren't following rules right now. Donald Trump is not following rules, because if he was following rules, then right now the East Wing of the White House would not be demolished, right? Because there's set parameters for what you have to do for national historic buildings and monuments in terms of how you preserve those and the process by which you modify and change that, the approvals that you have to get, going to Congress to get approvals, doing the appropriations process. He doesn't give a damn about any of that stuff. And so in order for Democrats to get to a point to fight back, they're going to have to start not giving a damn either, right? And maybe go outside of those rules, go outside of those norms. And that is a bit uncomfortable for somebody who believes in those rules and believes in those norms to do that. And so we are really in a conundrum right now, right? Because it's not that Democrats aren't fighting. They're fighting with the ways that you should fight with, right?
Or Jamie, maybe,
yeah.
I appreciate your perspective, or maybe, they're all fighting dirty and the Republicans are better at it. I mean, they're bringing a knife to a gunfight, right? And they're getting smoked. But I think, the question becomes, like, if we're all going to break the rules, then we're going downhill fast. I think the real question I've got for you and for leaders in the Democratic Party is, who's in charge? It seems like nobody's in charge, right? It seems like the Democrats are eating their own. Graham Platner, who I want to get into, is maybe a good example of that, right? There doesn't seem to be any strategic clarity. There doesn't seem to be any leadership. And maybe that's the most important question that I want to ask you. Who do you consider the leader of the Democratic Party right now?
Well, before we get to that one, the who's in charge, Paul, this is how it always is.
Yeah, but it wasn't. But Jamie, respectfully, it wasn't like that when Barack Obama was the president. Barack Obama was in charge.
Well, Barack Obama was the president, but when
Nancy Pelosi was in charge. Nancy Pelosi was very much in charge.
But when you don't have a president, you don't have in charge. Nancy was in charge of the House, but Nancy wasn't in charge.
But she was also in charge, but she was in the minority.
No, but she wasn't in charge of what they did in the U.S. Senate, and I can tell you that because I was a House staffer when we were there, right? Yes.
Yeah.
She had the ironclad over the House, and she could dictate what happened in the House. But in terms of what happened in the Senate or what happened with governors, she wasn't in charge of that. When you don't have the White House, then you don't have that pinnacle of the party, the head of the party.
But she was good. But Jamie, this gets lost. She was good at her job.
Oh, she was good.
I don't know if Hakeem Jeffries is good. I don't think Hakeem Jeffries is good at his job. I don't think that Chuck Schumer, objectively as an outsider, I don't think Chuck Schumer is very good at his job.
Well,
and I wonder why Democrats continue to accept these people who are like failed head coaches of the New York Jets. They just keep losing, and they get rewarded with more games.
But we have to define that, because I really want, like, people throw things out, Paul, but like, okay, so what are you defining how she was good at her job? Was she
passed legislation and she blocked opposition legislation. She drove a strategic policy agenda and succeeded. And I was with her on much of this, right? Bipartisan stuff like the GI Bill, right? Let's talk about really specific wins, right? Like passing the GI Bill. That's something that she drove forward, got opposition from John McCain. Like that wasn't an easy fight. People think it is now. That's a good example, I think, of a clear one, right?
But Paul, she was Speaker of the House. So as Speaker of the House, she should pass legislation. Right?
Yeah, but it started when she was in the minority. I remember the basement. I remember the basement hearings, right?
I was the executive director of the House Democrats in 2006 when we were in the minority. So yes, there were a lot of bills that we fought against, but we didn't win them because we didn't have the votes in the House.
But you had your team in line.
Yes,
that's what I'm talking about, right?
And
you kept the team in line,
and that's where I want to go. Look at the votes that Hakeem has led in terms of the House. The House Democrats have been unified. They have absolutely been unified for every CR vote, unified for all of these things in terms of opposition, unified. So the same thing that Nancy did in the minority, Hakeem has done the same thing in terms of keeping the Democratic caucus unified in terms of opposition against the Republicans. Now, I cannot say that about the Senate, right? Senate's a different animal. But if I'm comparing apples to apples, Nancy in the minority and Hakeem in the minority in terms of keeping Democrats unified on message and also in terms of tactics and votes, they have been the same. They really have.
I will challenge you on a really important point message. The Democrats are not unified on message, and I think that's where Hakeem Jeffries is failing the most. I don't think he's effective as a communicator. I don't think he's effective as a strategic organizer in keeping them strategically organized around a message. I don't even think he's consistent in message with Schumer sometimes. I mean, not to mention AOC and Fetterman and any other number of things. I really think this is maybe where Democrats are failing the most, is they can't coordinate on a daily national message. Right, you got Gavin Newsom over here, you got Pritzker over here, you got Westmore, you got Mikey Sherrill, you got AOC, right? You got Mamdani. I mean, this is an easy opposition to fight because they're so fragmented in their narrative, right?
Well,
Even let's use Mamdani as a clarifier. Mamdani is the test case for the Democratic Party on whether or not they will support him or not.
Paul, this is the challenge that Democrats have that Republicans don't have. I will continue to debate you about Hakeem's effectiveness because I think the House Dems have actually done a pretty damn good job of keeping, with all of the diversity of the Democratic Party, keeping that party on message. Again,
only Democrats believe that.
No.
I think only Democrats believe that.
Well, I mean, and
maybe half of Democrats.
Well, they can argue whether or not, but I mean, just looking at the narrative and looking at, like, I know that House Dem caucus probably better than I know the back of my hand. And it's because I worked so hard in it for so long. And I know how hard it is to shepherd them. It is like herding cats. It really is. It is probably one of the hardest jobs in politics is being the leader of the House Democratic caucus. Part of that also goes to why it's so difficult for Democratic messaging. When you look at the Democratic Party, it is very different than the Republican Party. And part of that difference is it looks different than the Republican Party. It is more diverse than the Republican Party. When you have a monolithic, almost monochromatic party, look at the House Republican Conference and compare it to every diverse background or experience you find in America, you find in the House Democratic Caucus. That is not what you see in a House Republican Conference. And along with diversity is a great strength, right? Diversity is what makes America so unique and so strong. But along with diversity comes complexity. And that means when you have so many people for so many different backgrounds, that different races, religions, sexual orientation, gender identity, all of the above, and coming from different places, a Democrat from South Carolina is different from a Democrat from New York.
I get it. But Jamie, this is not a very compelling argument to oppose Pete Hegseth with.
No.
I mean, like, the argument is the reason we're losing is because diversity is complicated.
Well, I don't think the reason why we're losing is because we don't have the votes in the House and the Senate. That's the reason why we're losing.
Okay, so maybe let's take a step back. I want to go back to where I started because I think sometimes too many Democrats, I think, get lost in the sauce here. So you're good with Hakeem Jeffries. He gets your vote. He gets your confidence vote. Okay. Chuck Schumer, you good with him?
I think Chuck has some challenges sometimes.
Yeah, like John Fetterman. Like, that's a pretty big challenge right now, right? And yesterday he lost Ossoff and he lost Warnock. He lost two Georgia Democrats in a critical vote, right? I mean, Schumer, let's be honest here. Schumer is a dinosaur. And he's getting smoked every day. And, like, it seems like most of the Democrats, especially AOC, are waiting for him to die.
Well,
they're waiting for him to die, and then AOC runs for the Senate seat in New York, and then you guys are waiting, which I understand as a strategy. But the point that I think many Americans have is you're waiting too long. It's what happened with Biden. You're waiting too long, and America's on fire.
Well, the Senate Dems don't have the discipline that I think the House Dems have, and that's why I pushed you on Hakeem, because, again, on all of these key votes, House Dems have been unified. I think if they've lost anybody, it was like one out of 200 and what, 4 or 5 members that they.
Yeah, but they're not. I mean, again, the messaging, like, do you think that Pat Ryan is on the same page with Hakeem Jeffries, and you got people like Tim Ryan and others? I mean, you can say you're unified, but in the narrative, and especially as we go into the midterms, where you're going to have a real crisis in the party between the progressives and the Democratic Socialists and the Blue Dogs, and you got Mikey Sherrill over here, and you got Mamdani over here, literally across the river from each other, right? They sound very, very different, and I think that's going to hit a very challenging messaging loggerheads when you get to midterms.
But Paul, we've always been this way, right? We've always had this diversity within our caucus. When I was the ED for the House Dem caucus, we had 45 Blue Dog members from the South. We had 40 some odd Congressional Black Caucus members, 20 members of
So maybe you guys need to have 2 parties. Like, this is where I sit from the outside. I'm like, hey, why don't you stop making a marriage work that doesn't work? Let AOC do her thing. Let Mikey Sherrill do their own thing. And then maybe America will be better served.
Well, we got the party that we got. And so it is incumbent in order to find ways to keep that party together in order to move forward. I mean, I think the one coalescing thing is, right, it's not that there's such great range between, on some issues, there are some great ranges. But for some of the underlying issues, we know that the American people are suffering right now, right? That the economic hardship, and we need to address that. We understand that there needs to be a return to the norms of the society where the rule of law actually means something, and that justice is blind to everybody, regardless of your political party. And that is something that is unifying. And so the thing that I often tell Democrats is stop fighting about the 10% of things that we may disagree on and start coalescing around the 90% of the things in which we all have some agreement, right? You can fight like hell once you get the majority back and you have the power on that 10%. But in the meantime, we don't have the luxury of having the divisions. We don't have the luxury of the infighting right now. We don't have the luxury of all these other things because Rome is burning. It is literally.
Yeah, you guys are, because of that division, you guys are really easy to beat right now. And if we talk about the House, we talk about the Senate, here's what's missing, most of all, in my view, right? As an independent, as someone who was rooting for the Democrats to slow down this Trump machine, right? He is steamrolling every day. He's rolling through you guys. He's rolling through the whole country. But you're our last hope here. Outside of course, hoping that they're rational, moderate Republicans, or right now, Rand Paul is a voice of reason, right? Marjorie Taylor Greene is slowing him down in some places. Like, when we're fighting Godzilla, you could take it from anywhere it comes. But I think there's a critical missing piece that maybe we talked about on CNN. What is the national narrative each day to counter Trump? Even if you guys did like a Democratic response and did a roundtable and said, okay, today it's going to be Barack Obama. Tomorrow it's going to be Gavin Newsom. The next day it's going to be Mikey Sherrill. Then it's going to be Wes Moore. There's nothing that, and I think this is really important, Jamie, is defining the brand. Mm-hmm. The Democratic brand is toxic, right? You talk about someone like Graham Platner who's trying to redo it, right? You look at someone like Dan Osborne in Nebraska. All these independent candidates who are recognizing if they drop the D, especially in purple and red states, they're a lot more popular. You have a brand problem that is not getting any better. It is getting worse, and Trump is going to bang it on you. He's going to blame the shutdown on you. He's going to blame riots on you. And it's easy to do when you don't have dynamic strategic narrative. You don't have Barack Obama, who's sitting on the sidelines still. I keep going back to that. If you have his cell phone number, maybe ask him if he can come on this show and tell me, where the fuck is he? Why is he not talking every day as the most talented communicator of our time? So I think that's really what I want to get at with you, Jamie. Like, who's the brand now? Is it you? It's not Hakeem Jeffries. Maybe it is. Is it Mamdani? Who is going to be the brand? Because America can't get through all that other political shit. They're looking at who the leader is, right? And Bill Clinton's gone. Joe Biden's gone. The presidential candidates haven't emerged, and they won't emerge quickly enough. So in the meantime, who's the brand, Jamie?
Well, I mean, and that has always been the challenge when you're out of power and when you're out of the White House. When, you know, the power and the attention is divided so among.
But you guys might be out of power forever at this rate.
Well, and if that's the case, then the country is no longer democracy, right? I mean, it is.
Yes. Yes, exactly.
I think and this is where I go back to the American people. Listen, the Democratic Party is going to be the Democratic Party, but in the end of the day, the American people are going to have to stand up and decide what it is that they want. They're going to have to decide what type of world that they want to live in. They're going to have to make a decision, right? The party is never going to be perfect. There's always going to be something that you're going to be able to gripe at or pick at. The brand may be damaged at this point in time, but is the Democratic Party brand more important than you being able to say what you want to say and have freedom of speech, to be able to do the things that you want to do? And that's where the question is coming. And yes, it would be so much easier right now if we had somebody who was defined as who was going to be our presidential nominee in 28, and that person could be the individual. Well, the system doesn't work that way. And that's not to say that you can't find a way to change it, but it's kind of hard to reinvent something when people aren't used to doing it in that fashion.
Yeah. But that's where we are, right? The Democratic Party needs reinvention. Or actually what people are saying is they're speaking with their feet. They're leaving the Democratic. Young people, 60% are unaffiliated and independent. They're not joining the Democratic Party. So they're voting with their feet. They're voting with their affiliation. And I'm putting you on the spot here, Jamie, but like when you say to, if somebody came down from Mars and said, give me 3 really good examples of what you want the Democratic Party to be, I think your voice is important on this. You used to bet on candidates, right? That was part of your job, right? Who are 3? I won't ask you to take one. Who are 3 that you think are worth betting on for the future of the Democratic Party? Because I think it is at a crisis point, and our country is at a crisis point.
You mean
who are 3 Democrats that you think are the best examples of what the Democrats can or should be?
It's an interesting question. There's a candidate that I love right now that I'm doing some work with in Arkansas. His name is Chris Jones. He is a scientist. He's a pastor, and he ran for governor against what's Trump's
Huckabee
Sanders.
Yep, Sarah Huckabee. Yep.
Yeah, Chris is the type of candidate that I think a good person. Good man, great father, smart as hell, but also is very spiritual, that I think is the type of candidate that I would love to see more of.
There's one. I know I'm putting you on the spot here, but this is exactly what I think the party is lacking, right? Because if there was a Democratic response to the president's weekly radio address, that's the guy, if you're in charge, they put this guy out there, right? Put him out on the circuit. Well, okay. 2 others that you think are good?
But there is a Democratic response to the if they're still doing those addresses.
I don't even know if they are, but that's why I use that as an example, right? Yeah.
But it used to be the House and the Senate and the governors would pick somebody to respond.
Yep.
I don't know.
They picked me in 2004. I did the Democratic response to the president's weekly radio address in 2004, and I was not a Democrat. That's where when they called me, I thought you had to be that. But I think that's what's missing, right? The weekly counter narrative, the daily counter narrative.
I agree. I
gave you time.
Another candidate that I love, and she's running a race that I know very familiar, is Dr. Annie Andrews here in South Carolina. She's a pediatrician, and she's running against Lindsey Graham for the U.S. Senate. She is, again, somebody with real life experience. Her number one driver is, what do we do to keep kids safe? And from gun safety to all to the kids and their mental health and everything else, their vaccinations and all. I think she's another great candidate that I love. Third candidate who I'm really
anybody who might like. I know you're not picking anyone that most folks on the national stage are going to recognize, right?
Yeah, I'm picking candidates right now that I just think are.
I know, and I appreciate that.
So if you wanted me to pick somebody that is an incumbent right now,
yeah, like who's good to fight Trump? Who are you putting here? Choose your fighter, right, Jamie? It's the octagon in front of the White House, right? Dana White's got his dream, okay, and it's like you remember that old that video? It was like two clans go to war, and you had like Gorbachev and Reagan fighting in the ring. So they send in Trump. Who are you sending in for your side?
I love both Gavin Newsom and J.B. Pritzker and what they're doing right now. Just governors who are just going at it and throwing. giving them as good as he's throwing at them. I think they are doing a really, really good job. Another person that I love, and you mentioned him earlier, is Wes Moore. I think Wes is just, I mean, you can't create in a laboratory a better guy and better candidate than Wes Moore. I mean, he is just, you know, he is model ideal. And so, you know, those are some good folks. I think our governors right now, Andy Beshear down in Kentucky, right now, I really do think the governors are sort of the model for leadership in the party at this juncture. You know, they're executives who understand what it is to lead, to be in charge of the executive branch, but also, you know, they're folks who are anchored in conviction. And so I'm really loving the governors right now.
I'm with you on that. I think here's a really important thing that I'm going to highlight, right, Jamie? You will know they are effective if they can grab the mic.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what Gavin's been doing. That's what Pritzker's been doing. That's what Wes, I think, has the capacity to do more than anyone else. Because if you go on that spectrum, you've got like Gavin, then Pritzker, then Wes Moore on one critical thing, culture.
Yeah.
Owning the culture, right?
Yep.
Sports, music, family, being able to crack crabs and drink beers. Like that's Wes. I've had him on this show. He's a dear friend. I'm rooting for him always. I wish he was an independent. But if I'm a Democrat, I'm putting a lot of chips on Wes Moore because he can go and debate somebody and then he can catch passes from Lamar Jackson and go to the Breakfast Club and go to The View and go to Joe Rogan, right? You need to make more Wes Moores in the laboratory right now.
Yeah.
Right?
No, I totally agree. I think Wes is just, I mean, he is ideal, and he's just you know, what people I think are really, and it's part of what they loved about Obama and loved about Bill Clinton back in the day, and even I would say Joe Biden probably in his younger years, is the authenticity, right? Just real people.
I'm gonna go even further than that. I'll tell you, and I don't know if I've ever said this publicly. Wes Moore is the most likable human being I've ever met.
Yes,
people root for Obama when you met him in person. Sometimes he wasn't that likable. Like, I respect him.
No,
I appreciate him. I spent a fair amount of time with him, and I think he's a fantastic president, a great leader, transformative leader, maybe the best president of our time. I'll say that. But sometimes he could be a little thorny, right? Michelle Obama maybe is number 2 in my view of like most likable people I've ever been around. And I think that's really important because Wes has something special. I have never seen people of all kinds and white people root for Wes Moore in a way that is very unique and very special. And I think he's got a magic. We have all said it since we've known him, started knowing him.
I agree with you.
He's got a magic that I don't think anybody else on the radar has.
Paul, I totally agree with you on that. I mean, it's a magnetism to the guy, and it's genuine, right? It's not.
And he's good looking. He's got the muscle.
Yeah.
He's got he's got it, right? He's a superstar.
And it's not fake. It is genuine. Like it is all heartfelt. And that's why, I mean, I think Wes is really, if he decides to run in 2028, I think he'd be a formidable candidate.
If I'm you guys, that's where I'm betting. I know I've taken us a lot longer. Let me ask you one issue, if I can, that's really important right now. The Graham Platner situation in Maine. Yeah. Right? A lot of folks asked me about him in the beginning. Oh, he kind of sounds like an independent. I was like, he sounds like an independent in that he's a Marine and an oyster farmer. But beyond that, he's got a beard and he wears a T-shirt. But beyond that, his politics, I could always tell, were always pretty left, I think, of the middle.
Yeah.
All this is unfolding now. He hasn't been vetted. Bernie is doing this, I think, very fucked up gaslighting thing, saying, well, did you do 4 tours? In my view, it's not about how many tours he did. He's got some real issues like Nazi tattoos and misogynistic statements and racist statements that are indefensible, I would argue. Now, it's his case to make, but he's still leading in the Democratic primary sizably, which is interesting, right?
I mean, that was one poll that, who.
Yeah, but the bigger question is, he might win the primary. Democrats are great at having Democrats that win primaries and get destroyed in the general, right? I mean, you've seen that, right? Like,
in plenty of that.
So what's your take on Platner right now? And if you were still running, things, would you tell him to drop out because he might be doing more harm than good?
Well, I mean, in the end of the day, and you saw my tweet, there's no margin of error here. I mean, we need that Senate seat in Maine. I mean, that is one that is, North Carolina is one that we need. Ohio is one that we need. Maine is one we need. Alaska, if we can get that, that's one we need. And then we need to defend our Senate seat in Georgia. I mean, if we can do that, there's a path back to the Senate majority this cycle. But again, that is getting us straight. Like you have
that's running the table,
that
man.
Is running the table. You have no margin of error there. And it is not a crapshoot. And so, I don't get in my feelings about people get all caught up in, well, I really like this person, I really like that. In the end of the day, who has the best chance of winning? And we know what the Republicans are going to do. And I said it in my tweet that, they are going to take whatever they can and they will weaponize that, and they will even make shit up when it's not the truth. I saw it in my race, right? Lindsey Graham said that I was for defunding the police. My grandfather was a member of the Detroit Police Department for 30 plus years, right? I'd be the last person to talk about defunding the police because that would impact my family, right? But yet they will say shit that is not real, that is not true, and they will attach it to you. And that's partly because the brand is so bad, right? The Democratic brand is bad, and it goes back to that. So if we know that they're already calling us communists, if we know that they're already going to do that things, when you have said it yourself, then you're writing the ad for them. And so we just need to put our best foot front. That's not to say that Mills is, but there are other candidates that are involved in that race as well. Let's let Maine decide, but it's important for us as Democrats to vet all of our folks. Because if there's shit that is out there and in our background that needs to be out, it needs to be out. Because if we don't get it out in the primary, I can guarantee you that Republicans will find it. They will find it and they will weaponize it.
Yeah, I mean, it's this whole thing like, oh, we need more authentic candidates. You can have authentic candidates who don't have Nazi tattoos.
Yes, that's
right. Like, they're so hungry and desperate for authenticity that they're willing to compromise. And I think that shows me the kind of identity crisis that's happening within the Democratic Party. They're so hungry, they're so starved that I think most authentic people don't want a guy with a Nazi tattoo who said misogynistic and racist shit, right? That I think it's a real look into that. Look, I appreciate the candor of our conversation. A new thing I want to do, Friday football. Friday football, we taking the stage. We're going to go to sports. You love sports. I'm taking you beyond into extra time here. Thank you for sticking around. You love basketball, right? We're going to do this every Friday on the show if we can. We'll do Friday football, but I want to do basketball too because the NBA is kicking off. You're a Lakers fan.
I'm a big.
Give us your prediction for the Lakers. Is this LeBron's last season? And who are you picking to win the NBA championship?
Listen, I do think it is probably LeBron's last season. We'll see. He's hurt right now, so he's not playing for the first few weeks. But I do think it is his last season, probably, and then Luka will fully take over the team. But the Lakers are going to have to make they're going to have to make real trades and bring some folks on. I wish LeBron would have renegotiated his contract a bit, shaved a little bit off so that we can bring some more talent in so we could be much more competitive this season. Who knows? Maybe the team will gel. I don't know. But none.
Maybe you can get him to run for Senate in California.
Man, wouldn't that be something? Or to move down to Florida and run for Senate down there, man. I take.
The Republicans do, right?
Dude.
Urban Meyer was up on the Hill yesterday. Tommy Tuberville's up there. You got all these guys, what's his name? The punter from the Giants, Feely. Like, they're good at getting athletes and folks like that. You guys are not so good at it.
No, maybe we try to get Charles Barkley back in Alabama. You never know.
Who wouldn't want to see Charles Barkley run against Tommy Tuberville?
Oh, man.
I would.
That would be a hell of a debate. That would be a hell of a debate. So,
who's going to win it all, Jamie? Who do you think is going to win the NBA championship?
The question is, will OKC repeat? And, they have a solidly good team. But, Cleveland and New York out of the East, I would love to see the Knicks. The Knicks have been suffering for so long. I would just love to see the Knicks just actually get there. I used to root for Patrick Ewing and Mason and all those guys against the Bulls. And, it was just so heartbreaking every time. And so it would just be nice to see the Knicks actually get there at one point.
Thank you for saying that. Being a Knicks fan is probably like being a Democrat. We get kicked in the teeth every year, but we do have our leader. We got Jalen Brunson. I'm optimistic. A quick fire. I'm going to give you a couple football games, and you can make a prediction.
Okay.
We got Friday college football. We got 5 teams that are still undefeated. Ohio State, Indiana, which is a great football story, Texas A&M, Georgia Tech down at 7, BYU. I'll give you 2 top games to pick, and then one that's close to home for you. Ole Miss 6-1, number 8 is going against Oklahoma. Not a lot of great matchups this weekend.
Yeah.
But we got Ole Miss, which is on fire, against Oklahoma, which is steady at 6-1. Who are you picking, Ole Miss or Oklahoma?
Ole Miss.
All right, I'm with you on that. I think Ole Miss is rolling, and they got I'll come back to South Carolina. The big matchup probably Texas A&M is quietly 7-0. LSU at home 5-2, coming off a loss to Vanderbilt, which is now like not a surprise.
Yeah.
LSU at home against Texas A&M. Who you got, Jamie?
Yeah, I think I'm going Texas A&M on that.
I'm with you on that. LSU is not the LSU of old. All right, we'll finish at college with this. Your South Carolina team, the Gamecocks, are home. They're 3-4. I keep hoping they're going to be better, and they end up always in the same nether region. Alabama's coming to town, number 4 at 6-1. Who are you picking on that one?
I even hate to say this. I really hate to say this. I think it'll be a closer game than what is expected. But yeah, those Bamas.
Now that's how you know you're a real guy, right? If you bullshit and said, "Oh, South Carolina's good," then we would know you're not real and you're not keeping it real and you're not authentic. Okay, real fast football. Are you a Carolina Panthers fan?
Yeah, my house is divided. Half of my family are Panthers and the other half are Falcons fans. And so, I mean, you should see the family chat group. I just laugh all the time because I really, I'm not a big NFL guy, so it really doesn't.
Both having good years. The Panthers are 4-2 at home against the Bills. Who you picking, Panthers or Bills?
I think the Bills are going to take it. Bills they got a good team this year.
You're right, man. I think they need to bounce back, and the Panthers might be a good way to do it. I got the Bills, too. The big Sunday night game has got a lot of political implications because Aaron Rodgers is going to be there running his mouth. He's home with the Steelers 4-2. The Packers are coming to town 4-1-1. One thing I want to say is there should be no ties in football. I hope that someone can legislate that since they're legislating all kinds of other shit. This might be the one piece of legislation that Tommy Tuberville puts forward that I would support. But Packers, Steelers, who you got, Jamie?
Packers.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on that one. I think I want to see Aaron Rodgers get knocked around a little bit, and I'm going to root for the Packers.
Me too.
And the final game, the one that's close to me, my New York Giants, who seem to be the hottest 2-5 team in the world, at the Eagles in a rematch. We got to go down to Philly. Eagles are still 5-2. Jackson Dart and Cam Scatterbo, who I think if he ran for mayor right now would beat Mamdani, Cuomo, and Sliwa. Cam Scatterbo, Jackson Dart, and the Giants are going into Philly against the Eagles. Who you got, James?
Eagles.
All right, we're going to disagree. We're going to end on a disagreement. I'm picking my Giants. I know it's going to be tough, but I think they can get some magic going again. I can never pick the Eagles. I'm going with the Giants to get to a mighty 3-5. Listen, man, I really appreciate you doing this. Folks, I hope you enjoy the way we're taking this show in new directions. Friday, we're going to talk about sports always.
Hey, Paul, I also want to pitch. Folks, you can also,
please,
I got a podcast at our table, aotpodcast.com. I also have a lot of really honest and frank discussions. This week, I actually interviewed, and Paul, you would take a look. It's 4 women who call themselves the Colored Girls. These are 4 black women who have been involved in presidential politics for the last 30 some odd years, but they drop a lot of knowledge and history about the evolution of the Democratic Party over these last few decades. And it was a really great discussion.
Amazing. I was going to get to it. I was going to pitch your podcast, so I'm glad you did that. Also, you're on CNN and other places. I recommend folks follow you on social media. Let me ask you this. I want to always end shows with something good. I want to tell everybody, check out Oregon's new uniforms. They have these Grateful Dead uniforms. I went to see Oregon against Rutgers last weekend. In Rutgers, they smoked Rutgers. But Oregon's my son's favorite team. So something good, innovative, creative. Oregon keeps pushing the needle, and they've got some amazing Grateful Dead-inspired uniforms. But let me ask you, Jamie, something good you want to share with folks. Maybe a piece of advice, something you tell your boys. What's something good?
Well, listen, one of the things I would say to folks, my new episode that's coming up next week is with Congressman Jim Clyburn, who is like my political father, but he's been my mentor. And the thing that I would say to you is find a young person that you could do something positive for them in their life. It's really, really important. I would not be here right now. And all of the things that I've experienced, being ED of the House Caucus, being the chair of the oldest living party on the planet, the Democratic Party, but for the intervention of Jim Clyburn into my life. And so if, those who are listening, find a young person that you can do something good, not only your kids, but other young people that you can do something good for, because it's amazing what when you plant that seed, what the flower can sprout.
I love that, Jamie. I love that. We need more of that, the positive inspiration. I want to just send a special shout out in memory of the great coach Jim Hunter, who was somebody who did that with me at a really critical point in my life. Coach Hunter, for those of you that knew him, was an incredible guy, a Vietnam vet, came out of Texas, went through a lot of hardship and broke a lot of barriers, and was an incredible coach and really saved my life in a lot of ways. And that's proof of exactly what you're saying, Jamie. Folks who look down to the next generation help pull them up. So I encourage everyone to share that something good that Jamie brought us. And dude, thank you for all you're doing. Thank you for your patriotism, for your example. Thank you for helping me hopefully get Nick King on this show at some time soon. Folks, if you're digging what we're doing at Independent Americans, please hit that subscribe button right now on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you are. Go to independentamericans.us, join our Patreon community. We will be back on Monday with daily shows. Yes, we are going daily. We're going to keep the fire coming. I got a special guest coming up on Friday. I got another one booked on Monday, another one booked on Friday, and more to come. They're going to be good. And if I don't have a guest, I'll break down the news. So tune in. We'll try to put them up around dinner time each day on the East Coast. And we'll continue to speak truth to power, bring light to contrast to heat. Declare your independence because you are not alone, and we are all united in our vigilance and our love for this country. Until next time, stay vigilant, America. Stay vigilant. Happy early Halloween. Happy weekend. And thank you again, Mr. Jaime Harrison. You're a good man. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Paul. Take care, buddy.
Powered by Righteous Media.